Hello and welcome to video number 14, Building Queries in Access. In our last video number 13, we created our stuffed animal database that has 3 tables and we built a relationship between these 3 tables. In this video, we will use that raw data from the 3 tables to create queries that will give us useful information. Now, what is a query? A query is a question you ask about the data stored in the database. And so for our lesson, our database is for a store that sells teddy bears. And so some of the questions that we would ask, or from our queries, the useful information we would like to get is, for example, what is the price for each product? What is our gross profit? What is our inventory and what is our inventory value? And here is also a list of other examples of queries that we will build or create in this video. This is the file that we created in our video number 13. And if you followed along, then you have this file. Go ahead and open it since we'll use the same data here to create our queries. If you do not have this file, then from our class website, you can download the finished file from video number 13 and you can use that to follow along as we create our queries. Now here in our navigation pane, we can see we have our 3 tables and we have the 3 forms. I will double click the products table to open it. And here we see we have opened our products table. We have the fields and we also have the records for our products. To change the field width so that I can see the entire field, I can bring my mouse carefully at the end of the field that I would like to expand. And once I see the cross with the 2 arrows, then I can carefully click on that and drag to the size that I would like. Or I can double click on that to fit the entire field name. Or the other thing I can do, I can select all the fields in my table and again carefully bring my mouse in between either of the field names. And then once I see that cross with the 2 arrows, I will double click on that. And now I can see that I have changed the width of my field names and I can see all the field names displayed here on my table. So now from this raw data in the products table and also from our customer list and supplier list table, we will build or create our queries. And again, as I mentioned, a query is a question you ask about the data stored in the database. And so our first question will be, what is the price for each product? And so what we will show in our query is the product description and the sell price for each product. And then we will sort our sell price in ascending order. So before I close our table, because we made the changes to our structure, we will save this. So Control S to save. And so now let's close our table and create our first query. On our ribbon, click on the Create tab. And then in the Queries group, click the Query Design button to display the query window in Design View. And we can see that opens the Add Tables dialog box with the Tables tab selected. The Add Tables dialog box lists all the tables in our stuffed animal database, and we can choose to base our query from one of these tables or even 2 or even all the 3 tables. The query that we are creating is based on the products table, and since the products table is selected, we can either click Add Selected Tables, or we can double click the products table to add this table to our query. So I will double click that, and now I can close the Add Tables dialog box. I will now carefully bring my mouse and hover on the edge corner here on my table until I see the double arrow shaped line, and I will drag that to resize to see all the fields in the table. And once I see all the fields in the table, I will release my mouse. The default name for our query is Query 1, and we can see that is displayed here on the tab for the query, and we will change this to a name that will reflect what our query is when we save this. This top portion here of the query window in Design View, it contains the field list for the table or tables used in the query. The table name shows here at the top of the field list, and the fields are listed here in the order they appear in the table. The primary key symbol is also shown to identify the primary key for the table. Each field list here contains the fields for the table or the tables you are querying. This bottom portion here, it contains the design grid. In the design grid, you include the fields and record selection criteria for the information you want to see in the query. These here are the columns, and each column will contain the specifications about the field you use in the query. To pull the design grid up, carefully hover your mouse and the line that is separating the top portion and the bottom portion until you see the cross with a double arrow shaped, and then you can hold your mouse down and you can pull that to where you want that to be. I'm pulling it up, and I release my mouse, and now my design grid has been pulled up here. To place a field from the field list in the next available design grid column, you double click on the field name, and I will double click cost, and you can see now that has placed the cost field in the design grid column. To remove the field from the design grid column, you select the field, and then on your keyboard you press delete key. And now if I click on the table right there, I can see that the field has been removed from the grid design column. Up here is our ribbon displaying the query design tab. In the query type group, by default the select button is selected, which indicates that we are creating a select query where we are specifying the fields and the records we want in our query. When building your query, you can see the results of your query at any time by clicking the View button or the Run button, and that displays the query in Datasheet view. And that will show the fields and records that is a result of running the query or the result of answering your question. Another thing that I would like to mention, the fields here on this top portion of our query window in design view are listed in the order they appear in the table. But on the bottom portion here in the design grid, this can be different because as we build our query, we can select the fields and place them in the design grid column in the order that we want depending on the information we need to see in the query results. So here in the design grid, once we select the field names for our query, that will appear here, and also the name of the table will appear here. We will also use the sort row if we are sorting. By default, when we select a field for our query, the show box will also be checked, and if we do not want to show that field in our query, we can uncheck the show box here. Here is where we will build our criteria on what conditions we want on the columns. We can use the AND logical tests, the OR logical tests, or any other logical tests. So the first thing we will now do is to save our query to reflect what our query is. And the question we are asking is the sell price for each product. And so to save our query, Control S, and we will name this product and sell price. And then click OK. And now we can see here on the navigation pane, we can see the queries object has now appeared, and we can see the name of our query right there. So the fields that we will use in this query is the product description and the sell price. So if I double click on the product description, that now appears on the design grid column. And if I would like to see the results of this query, I can click on the View button right here, and I can now see I have just the product description for my query. So to go back to the design view, I will again click on the View button, and now I am back on the design view window. So the next field that I will add here is the sell price. So I will double click that, and I can now see the sell price here appears on the grid design column. Right here by default, as I said, we can see that the show box is checked. And if we do not want to show any of these columns in our query, we can uncheck that. And now if I click the View button, I see I don't have the product description, I only have the sell price. So I will click View button to go back to the design view, and I will check that box to show the product description field. So now the next thing that we need to do, we need to sort our sell price in ascending order, and we will use the sort row right here. So I'm clicking here on the sell price column and on the sort row, and then once I see that arrow, I will click on that arrow, and then I will select ascending. And now if I click on the View button right there, I can see now my price is sorted in ascending order. So if we were to make any changes to our raw data, our query will update automatically. And to illustrate that, I will close our query right here. And before I do that, I will save this. So Ctrl S to save and then close that. And now if I open the products form to make changes to our sale price, I will change the sale price for chocolate teddy bear. And I will change from $17 to $5. And now, because this is raw data, I do not need to save this. So I will just close the form. And now when I come back and open our products and sale price query, I can now see that my sale price has updated automatically. So because I do not want to leave this as $5, I will close this and I will open my form again and I will change that back to $17. And again, I will close this. I don't need to save that. And once again, when I open my query, I can see now my price has also updated right here. So I will close this query using the X button here. And now we are ready to create all our other query examples. Now, if you would like to follow along as we create the queries, the questions and pictures of each query that we will create in this video are provided in our PDF notes. So if you would turn to your notes, Video 14, Building Queries in Access PDF Notes. And if you would turn to page number 5, on the section that states these are all the queries that we will create, including picture of each query, you will find all the query examples listed here, and you can follow along as we create all our other queries. So now we will create our second query. And the question for our second query, show products from Riverside Station Store. So on our ribbon, we will click on the Create tab. And then on the Queries group, click on the Query Design button. And now we have our Add Tables dialog box open. And we can see here the Queries tab is selected. And this is because on our navigation pane, we have the queries selected there. So we will click on the Tables tab to select the tables. And then on this query, we are using the Products table and the Supplier List table. So I will double click on the Products table. And then I will double click on the Supplier List table. And then I can close the Add Tables dialog box right there. So I would like to resize this. And so I will hover my mouse until I see the double arrow shaped line. And then I will drag that to show all the fields. And I will do the same to the Products table to show all the fields. And now the fields that I would like to use from the Products table is the product description and the supplier code. So I will double click on that, and then I will also double click on the supplier code. And then from the supplier list table, we would like to use the supplier store name. So I will double click on that. And now you can see right here in our query design grid. And if I pull that up, we can see we have the fields product description and supplier code. And these two are from the products table. And we can also see we have the supplier store name, and this is from the supplier list table. And if I would like to show this entire field name, I will drag the width right there to show the entire field name. And now I can see the entire field name, supplier store name. So since our question is to show products from Riverside Station Store, we'll have to add a criteria. So before I add our criteria here for the specific store that we would like to show, which is the Riverside Station Store, I would like to view our query. So I will click on the View button right here. And I can see right here our query is showing the result for all the supplier with all the supplier code here. So I will again click on the View button. And right here on my criteria, I will add a condition for Riverside Station Store, and I will put the Riverside Station Store supplier code here, which is RS. And I'm typing this in the supplier code column and on the criteria row. And now, if I click on the View button, I can see that I'm only showing the products from Riverside Station Store. So if I click again the View button, I can now see I have the condition in double quotes right here in my criteria row. So now I will save this. So Ctrl S to save our query. And we will name this query Products from Riverside Station. And I will click OK. And now we can see we have two queries here on our navigation pane. So I will close that. Our third question is to calculate the gross profit. So in this query, we will see how to use formulas, and our first formula we will see is how to calculate the gross profit. So I will double click on the products table to open the products table first. And right here on this table, we will get the sell price minus the cost price to get the gross profit for each product. And then we will use that and multiply by the quantity sold and get the total gross per product. So I will close this. And then I will click on the Create tab, Query Design. I'm using the Products table, so I will double click that. And I will close the Add Tables dialog box. I will resize that. And I will also pull this grid up there. And I'm using the Product Description field, so I will double click that. And then the next field that I need is the sell price, so I will double click that. And now I need the cost, so I will double click on that. And I will also need the quantity sold, so I will double click on the quantity sold. And so for our next field here, this is a calculated field. So I can either type the name of my field here in the formula here, or I can right click on that and then click zoom. And then right here, I can type the name of the field, which is gross per product. And then I will type the double colons. And then for my formula, I will leave a space there, and then I will use the square brackets, and then I will type the name of the field that I'm using for calculation, which is the sell price. And then the square bracket again, and then the minus symbol, square bracket, and then my field, which is cost, and then the square bracket, and then I can click OK. And if I expand my column width here, I can now see I have the name of my field here, and I also have the formula that I am using to calculate the gross per product. So now I can click on the View button to see the results of my query. And I can see right here I have the product description, the sell price, the cost, the quantity sold, and then the gross per product. So I will click here and double click to enlarge the column width. Here I'm getting the sell price minus the cost of the product to get $9, which is the gross per product. So I will click on View because I would like to add another calculated field. And this time my calculated field will be total gross per product. So again, I will right click on that and then click zoom, and I will type the name of my field here. And then the double colon space, and then the square bracket, and then I will get the field that I have just calculated, which is gross per product, and then square brackets, and then multiply that by square bracket quantity sold, and then I'll add the square bracket to that, and I will click OK. And I will click on that to expand my column width, so I can see the entire field and the formula that we have used right there. And now if we click the View button, we see we have our calculated fields here. And if I double click on that field, our two calculated fields are there. We have the gross per product, and then we have the total gross per product. So I will click on View, and I will save our query, Control S, and I will name this gross profit and click OK. So now we have 3 queries here, and I will close that, and now we can create our fourth query. And the question for our fourth query is calculate the inventory. Again, this is a calculated field, and we will calculate the inventory for our products table. So I will click on Create and then Query Design. And then I'm using the products table, so I'll double click on that, and I will close the Add Tables dialog box, and I am resizing that. The field that I'm using here is the product's ID, so I will double click on that, product description, quantity on hand, and then the quantity sold. So my next field is a calculated field, and I will name this inventory, so I can type there inventory. And since I would like to type my formula there too, I will add my double colons there and space, and then I will right click that and then click on zoom. And then for my formula here, this will be square bracket quantity on hand, square bracket minus square bracket quantity sold, and then square bracket on that one. And I will click OK. And I will pull my grid up, and then I will increase the width for my calculated field there, so I can see the entire formula here and the field name right there. And now if I click on view, I see I have my results here. I have the product ID, product description, quantity on hand, quantity sold, and inventory. And my inventory is the quantity on hand minus the quantity sold. So I will click on the view button and I will save this query. So Control S, and I'm naming this query inventory, and then click OK. So I will close that. And I can now see I have 4 queries here. So I would like to rename my queries as 01, 02, 03, 04. So to rename that, I will select on the query, and my first query was product and sell price. So I will select on that and then press F2 on my keyboard and then press home so I can go to the beginning of my query name right there. And then I will type 01 space and enter. And then my second query was products from Riverside station. So I will select on that, press F2, press home, and then type 02 space enter. Our third query was the gross profit. So I'll select that, press F2, press home, type 03 space enter. And our fourth query is the inventory. So select that, press F2, press home, and then type 04 space enter. So we have renamed our queries, and then we can now move forward and create our fifth query. For our fifth query, the question is to calculate the inventory value. So I will click on Create tab, Query Design, and then on our Add Tables dialog box, we have the Queries tab selected. So I will select the Tables tab, and we are using the Products table. I will double click on that and then close the Add Tables dialog box. I will resize this, and the fields that we are using here is the products ID, product description, quantity on hand, and quantity sold. So I will also pull the query design grid up. For our next field here, this is a calculated field. So I will right click on that, click on zoom, and I will name our field inventory. And then I will type our formula there, and then I'll click OK, and I have my field there. So I would like to double click that and expand my column width right there. So the next field also is a calculated field. So I will right click on that, click on zoom, and the name of my calculated field here is inventory value. Double colon and type the formula, and the formula for our inventory value is the inventory, which is the field that we just calculated, and then we are multiplying that by the cost. So I will click OK, and then I will double click on that to expand my column width, and then I'll click on view, and I can see the results of my query. And if I double click on that, I can see I have all the fields there that I have chosen, and then I have the inventory and have the inventory value field right there. So I will click on the view button there, and then I will save my query. So Control S, 05, inventory value, and then click OK. And now I can close this query. So for our sixth query, our question is to show supplier store name and font for the products that we have on hand less than 15. And in this query, we are creating an inventory to reorder list. So I will click on Create Query Wizard, and for this one we are using 2 tables. So we will use the products table, so I will double click on that, and then we are using the supplier list table. I will double click on that, and then I will close the Add Tables dialog box. I will expand that and resize that too, and then I will pull up my query design grid, and from the products table I'm getting the product ID, product description, quantity on hand, quantity sold, and then from the supplier list table I'm getting the supplier store name and the telephone. And our next field is a calculated field. So I will right click, click on zoom, and then we will name this inventory to reorder. And then we will type our formula there, which is quantity on hand minus quantity sold. And then we'll click OK. So for this query, we have a condition. And our condition, we want to show the products that have on hand less than 15. So in our calculated field here, and I will double click on that to expand the column width. On the criteria, we will add a condition, and this will be on hand less than 15. So I will use the less than symbol, and then I will type 15. And now if we click on view, and if I double click to expand my inventory to reorder, I can see the inventory to reorder, we only have the products that are less than 15. So I will click on view, and I will name this Control S, and we are naming this 06 inventory to reorder, and click OK. And now we can see we have 6 queries there, and I will close our query. Our 7th query, we are calculating the average cost price. So I will click on create, query design, and we will only use the products table. So I will double click on that, and then I will close that, and I will expand that. And since this is only average cost price, the only field that we are using is the cost. So I will double click on cost, and right here, we do not see any formula here that can show the average, but right here on your ribbon, we see the total sigma right there. So we can use that, or we can also right click on the cost field column and then click on the total sigma right there. And now we can see group by. So if we click on that arrow, we can select average. So if I select average, now I'll be getting average cost price. So I will pull up my query design grid, and then I will click on view, and I can see I have my average of costs. So I will click on view, and I will name my query. So Control S, and this is 07 average cost price, and then click OK. And if I click view, now I can see my average cost price for my teddy bears is $15.50. So I will close that. For our query number 8, we are calculating the average cost for each supplier. So I will click on create, query design. We're using 2 tables, so I will double click on products, double click on supplier list, and close that. And then I will resize that and resize that, and I will pull up my query design grid. And the fields that we are using here is the supplier code, and then the supplier store name, and then the costs. So for this one, we would like to add a total rows. So I will right click on the cost column, and then I will click totals to add the total row. So I'm grouping by supplier, and what that means is that the group by is a database terms, which means to group the records together by a condition, and then we will do something like a calculation with it. So the calculation that we are doing here is for the average cost. So I will click on the group by, and then click that arrow in the cost columns, and then select average. So right now we are grouping by supplier, and we are getting the average cost. So if I click view, I can see we have grouped that by supplier, and we have the average cost for each supplier. So I will click view, and I will save this, Control S, and this is 08 average cost price group by supplier, and then click OK. So I will close this, and then we will move on to our 9th query. And for our 9th query, we are calculating the minimum and maximum cost for each supplier. So again, I will click on create, query design, and we are using 2 tables, so products and supplier lists, and close that and resize these 2 tables, and then pull up the query design grid. So the fields that we are using here is the supplier code, again, supplier store name, and the costs. But for this one, we would like to show the minimum and the maximum cost price grouped by supplier. So again, we are grouping by supplier. So on the cost field column, I will right click on that and then click totals to add the total rows. And then I'm grouping by, so I will click on that arrow and then select minimum. So right here, I have a minimum cost. So I will add another field, and this time it will still be the cost field. So I will double click on that. And here we want the maximum cost price. And so on the cost field column and on the totals row, click on the group by and then click on that arrow, and then I will select maximum. So I have minimum and maximum cost grouped by supplier. So if I click view, I can see we have the supplier and the minimum and maximum cost for each supplier. So I will click view and then I will save our query, Control S, and this is 09 minimum and maximum cost price grouped by supplier. And I will click OK, and I will close our query right here. For our query number 10, 11, and 12, we are calculating the average sale price to each customer, and the minimum and maximum sale price to each customer. So basically, we are repeating the same steps we used in creating our query number 7, 8, and 9. Only this time we are using the customer list table and not the supplier list table. So I will pause this video and I will build these 3 queries. And if you are following along, repeat the steps we used for query number 7, 8, and 9, but be sure to select the products table and the customer list table. Also, the notes and pictures of these queries 10, 11, and 12 are provided in our PDF notes, and you can refer to them as you build these queries. So here is the 3 queries that I have created, 10, 11, and 12, and I will double click on each. This is the average sale price. This one is the average sale price grouped by customer. And this one here is the minimum and maximum sale price grouped by customer. So I will close all of them. And you should have the same if you are following along and creating the queries too. So next, we will create our query number 13. And our question is, show records where the sale price is greater than $20 and less than $40. So this is a logical test that we will create. So I will click on create query design, and my add tables dialog box is in queries. So I will select the tables tab, and I'm using the products table. So I'll double click on that and I will close that, and I will resize that to show all the fields. And I will also pull up my query design grid. So here I want to show all the fields. And so to show all the fields, I will double click right here on the table name, and that selects all the fields. And now I will drag my fields to my query design grid, and I have all the fields showing right here. So my criteria or the logical test that I'm creating is on the sale price field. So I will click on the sale price field on the criteria row, and I will type greater than symbol 20 space and then and space less than symbol and then 40. And I will save this, Control S. And this is query number 13, sale price greater than 20 and less than 40. And I will click OK. And now instead of clicking view to view my query in the datasheet view, because I've already saved this, I will click on this run button. And now that runs my query. And you can see the name of my query here. And also you can see I'm showing only the records that have the sale price, which is greater than $20 but less than $40. So I will close this and I will create our query number 14. So sometimes we need to do a contain search query. We want to search any product that contains the word bouquet. So if I double click on our products table to open that, we will search from our records teddy bears that contain the word bouquet. So our question for our query number 14 is show records that has a product description that contains bouquet. And so I will close this and then I will click on create query design, and we are using the products table, so I will double click on that, and I will close the add tables dialog box, and I will resize this to show all the fields, and then I will pull up my query design grid, and I would like to show all the fields in my query, so I will double click on the table's name to select all the fields, and then I'll drag all the fields into the field area of my query design grid. And now I can see I have all the fields here. So for this query, on the criteria row and on the product description field column, we will click on that, and so we will use the asterisk wildcard. So I will type asterisk and then the word bouquet and then asterisk. And so the asterisk represents 0 or more characters, and this is also in Excel, and it also represents 0 or more characters in Excel. If you would want only a single character, then you will type the question mark, and the question mark will represent only a single character. So now I will save our query, and I will use the keyboard shortcut Ctrl S, and this is our query number 14. Product description contains bouquet, and I will click OK. So now when we run our query, I will click on the run button here, and we can see our query is opening in the datasheet view, and we can only see now we only show 3 records that contain the word bouquet. So I will close this, and now we will create our query number 15. And the question for our query, show records for the suppliers RS or AS. So again, this is a logical test query where we are showing supplier store code, whether it is either RS or it is AS. So I will click on create query design, and we are using the supplier list table. So I'll double click on that, and I will close that. I will resize that, and I will also pull up my query design grid. And since I want to show all the fields, I will double click on the table name, and then I will drag my fields down here, and I can see all the fields are showing. So on the criteria row, on the supplier store code field column, I will type RS, and then on the OR column, because this is a logical test, I will type AS. And I will save our query, and our query name is query number 15, supplier store code RS or AS. And I will click OK. And I will run our query, and I can see our query is only showing the supplier store code for RS or AS. So I will close that, and I would like to show you when I open this query one more time, and I will open in the design view. So when we were building this query, we put in the criteria RS, and in the OR row, we put AS. But when we open these again, we see that they appear on a single row, the criteria row, with the OR operator showing right there. So I will close that. We will now create our last query for this video, which is query number 16. The question for this query is show supplier records by parameter. A parameter query will display a dialog box that prompts you to enter one or more criteria values when you run the query. So for our parameter, our criteria will be the supplier code, which we will display only the product records for the supplier which we specify. So we will create our parameter query based on an existing query. And so we will click on our query number 13, sell price greater than $20 and less than $40. And we will copy and paste that. So I will right click on that and click copy. And then I'll click anywhere on my database, and I will Control V to paste my query, and the pasters dialog box opens, and here we will name our query, and this is query 16, supplier record by parameter, and I will click OK. And now we can see our query number 16 here on our navigation pane. So we will open this in design view. So I'll right click that, click design view, and now that opens in the design view. I will click to drag my query design grid a little bit down, and now I can see my fields right here. And here from the sell price field column, I will delete the criteria that we had, and we will create our new criteria, which will be our parameter on the supplier code field column. So when we are creating a parameter, the brackets must enclose the text of the prompt. And so we will start with the open square bracket, and then we will type enter supplier code, and then I'll type the double colon, and then I will type the close square bracket. I will drag that to the side, and now I can see the entire field and the parameter that I have entered here. So now I will save this, Control S, and if I run my query, it will prompt us to enter the supplier code. So I will click on the run button, and I can see the enter parameter value dialog box opens, and here it's requesting us to enter the supplier code. And this is the same prompt that we put here on the supplier code field column. So I will enter the supplier code, and I will type US, and I will click OK. And now I can see I'm only showing the records for the US supplier code. So if I close this, and again I open the supplier record by parameter, so anytime I open that query, the enter parameter value dialog box will open, and it will prompt me to enter the supplier code here. So right now I will type RS, and I'll click OK, and I can now see only the records for the supplier code RS. So I will close this. And now that brings us to the end of this video, where we have learned to create different types of queries. We have seen 16 different examples where we have used a parameter, logical tests, and also formulas to build queries and answer our questions with useful information. In our next video, we will create reports based on the queries we build in this video, and we'll also learn how to create mailing labels. And so I will see you in our next video. Thank you.